as saying preparing to stream. Um, all right, I think I'm through. Just seems to be a little slow.
Nice.
Excellent. We are now live on YouTube.
Well, what do you think, Bash? Should we proceed? Groovy. Okay, awesome, cool. I'll be your moderator in when we get into any areas of discussion and question. Maybe just one um, sort of preemptive consideration in that regard is that the scope of this evening is really an attempt to give an overview. And it's also an opportunity to dip into these things, but we want to make sure that everybody has a sense of able to engage, but not have us go at massive depth into any one subject or single area that prevents us hearing anybody else's questions or getting the complete sense of more of the feedback. So when we identify that there might be things like, wow, okay, that sounds like something we really need to do more talking about, we'll have in mind, seeking the opportunities to do that with more depth. Cool. So I'm going to hand you over to Brian and Tim, who are key comms lead and key comms people. They've been data crunching and data interpreting and turning it into a lovely way of conveying it to us and sharing it with us so that we can all see that. And there's probably nobody more knowledgeable than them about the survey data. So thanks, you guys, and over to you.
Well, thanks, Brad. Yeah, and thanks everyone for tuning in. Yes, it feels like a lifetime ago when we were actually out of the blue, let alone supplying all the feedback to it. And yeah, we've got a few slides to get through. I'll try and get through it as quickly as possible rather than bore you to tears about it, even though we all find it really interesting. We'll publish the full presentation afterwards online via the website, so you can kind of look at it in detail as well. And there's opportunities for further questions beyond that. So it's really just for you to have something to digest. So I'm going to share my slides now. Let me know if you're got them or not. Cool. I've got a thumbs up. Okay. So we're going to take you through the event survey. Where am I? So this year, when we look at the numbers, there were 10,728 participants on site and 1,372 of you responded to the survey. There were 174-ish mutants. We didn't get a final count. Over 100 theme camps, 60 artworks, support camps, lots of burns, a few performances, a few artworks, and a few events. And yeah, anyone who was there, we just saw some of the most incredible artworks and burns. I'm lucky enough to have seen a few, and Scratch really took my breath away. And there's the artist behind it, Nathan. I hope that many of you have met and interacted with him through the years. Whenever we're putting together presentations like this, I often wonder how Nathan would interpret it or ask it. And he would definitely say that he doesn't have time for all of this nonsense. He just wants the top level information. So from our side, the feedback was that the majority of feedback, everyone had a really positive experience, the bulk of participants. What was nice for us is we can now begin to measure how many people we're inspiring to create something new in the default world, and it seems like it's quite a lot. We did observe that kind of the overall volunteer numbers are going down while it seems like the number of volunteer hours given are going up, so that fewer participants did more in Tanquetown. When it comes to what we contribute to the South African economy, 150 million rand is what burners are contributing locally, which is just a huge amount of money to participate and take part in it. And yeah, we asked for the first time how people feel we're doing as an organization and as a movement, etc. And we had really good positive feedback there. But as with anything, there's always room for improvement. As someone who's worked with a lot of data and stats, I know how data can be filtered and analyzed and shifted around to present any particular case that someone would want to hear. So there are definitely biases within data and reporting. We've been very careful as a team, not to filter or adjust any data. We have looked to interpret the data, but not necessarily to paint a picture that we are awesome or not, or deserve a raise. It's really just about how we understand where we are as an organization, as an event, and as a movement going forwards. Oops. Within a survey, you have to have a certain amount of feedback for a survey to be valid in terms of trusting the data and the sample sets that you're getting. So with our population size of about over 10,000, to have a really good confidence level in the data, 99%, with a margin of about 5%, you need a sample size of 627 people. So we had 1,372, which is over double what we need to have kind of confidence in the data. So we are confident that the data we're seeing is reflective of the event and the participants, but also to a point. You can't treat it like as a set of rules to follow, because if we did everything by the numbers, then it wouldn't necessarily be AfrikaBurn. It's information to reflect on and to try and make next year's burn even better. So we asked people the years that you've attended AfrikaBurn, and what we see is that for most people who come to AfrikaBurn, half of the people who come, or 56%, don't necessarily have the best time and don't come back the following year. But once you've gone through a year or two, then it's fairly consistent. If you look at the years, I mean, COVID kind of screws a lot of the data and obviously restricted events, but we do see that we have a kind of 40% rate with 40% new timers, and the other groups made up from people who had burnt before through various years, and then tapering off towards the end. We had more South African respondents than any local group. I think it's really interesting as an organization that when it comes to asking for event feedback, it's more of our local burners who are interested in giving feedback versus internationals. If you look at this as a set of respondents, with 73% being respondents here, if you actually look at the proper ticket data, you'll see that it's just over 50%. It's just shy of 60. So we see that when it comes to steering how the organization works and giving feedback, that South African burners are a bit more invested in the feedback process and the direction of AfrikaBurn. What was interesting for us is we had more participants from Africa than in previous years, not necessarily by a huge amount, but it's these kind of slight shifts and movements in participants that is always interesting for us to see, particularly with the tension between being a local regional event and wanting to encourage as much African participation as possible. When it comes to the actual gate data, with movement on site, you know, things like public holidays and other events really affect timings, we find, but we're still seeing the consistent theme that there's lots of people on site earlier on in the week rather than later. In previous years, we'd see that the event would really kind of only start building up around the middle of the week. But this year we had 6,000 people on site already on the Monday, which was over 1,000 people more than last year. And on Saturday we had 2,000 people on site, which is a fifth of the event. Obviously, you know, on work access passes building and putting everything together. With the movement and stuff, it was interesting to note that 10% of participants had left on Sunday. We asked in the survey when you left for the first time, as opposed to working off estimates. And then what we saw is that most people actually left on the Sunday, and then very closely followed by the Monday. And it's interesting to note that the timing of the event seems to be shifting more towards the beginning of the week than the end of the week, is just a general trend that we have noticed. Here's some more of the incredible artworks that we got to witness this year. Again, we check with people in terms of language and communications, you know, a strong bias towards English, as always. We've been trying to make sure we are less language dependent when it comes to instructions and information through the years. And that's something we're kind of continually looking to build upon. We also checked in about age groups. Again, there was no noticeable change. And that was interesting for us, because you would expect that, or there might be the belief that burners are getting older and there's not so many younger burners coming through the ranks. Purely, I think I have that belief because I'm an older burner and the people I hang around with are older burners, so I assume that that's the norm for everyone else. But we're definitely seeing that that age range is quite consistent within AfrikaBurn participants, which is quite nice to see, that it's not just going to be a few old farts left in 20 years' time hanging around a fire. We also checked in with regards to race and ethnicity. You know, we have a number of programs and activities in place, you know, and we are seeing a shift within AfrikaBurn participation to being a little less white, but obviously it's never as quick as we would like. But we are seeing it consistently shift through the years and incrementally getting higher, which is encouraging. And I think it's why, as an organization, we kind of are continuing with kind of programs and initiatives to try and address this.
Brian, Tim wants to interject.
Yeah, go for it.
I just wanted to point out on the last slide that there was a line that's blank at the bottom. Every question that we asked also gave the people an opportunity to not answer the question. So if you do see blank sections or blank lines, that's because those were not answers.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Another new question for this year was about the price of tickets. Again, we worked really hard behind the scenes to try and keep ticket prices low last year. And it was nice to see that was reflected in the feedback. We definitely felt that asking this question, we would be told that it would likely be too expensive, because it seems like everything's too expensive these days. But yeah, this was quite surprising for us internally that that it was kind of acknowledged that we'd kept ticket prices the same as previously. We asked you about information and how you use it. Again, newsletters and emails are the kind of main flow of information. That's quite different to other organizations in the outside world, where a lot of stuff seems to be going more short form social. We definitely see that there's been a big migration of AfrikaBurn information onto the kind of chat apps like WhatsApp and Telegram. There's some incredible burner groups popping up that are kind of great resources. Josie Burners, you know, we're in quite a few of them, and it's great because it's very much the communications that we've been trying to work towards, rather than AfrikaBurn the org having to try and do all the communication in terms of what AfrikaBurn represents. So we're actually looking at probably starting up an official AfrikaBurn WhatsApp broadcast channel this year, so that we can feed information to you on the platform that you like. Thanks for that drawing, Alex.
Can I-
Brain, Tim?
Can I
Yeah.
interject?
Yeah, please.
On the previous one, we used to be incredibly strongly driven by word of mouth. That statistics dropped dramatically since I started. And it's important for the people that are in here to know that the only way we're going to ever get new people to AfrikaBurn, or the people that we want, is to tell them. It's evident that we're not doing our jobs as a community and going out there and converting people. So yeah, we need to talk.
Not in a converting people, in a friendly way. Again, yeah, this stat has flipped recently. It used to be that people preferred social media over chat apps, but it seems that people are really kind of shutting down a lot of their social media channels compared to previous years. Again, stuff is probably more interesting internally than externally, but we asked you about your ticket purchase experience. Again, really good to see that 91% of participants managed just fine. There have been kind of challenges with registrations and then needing to register for this and that, and navigating through interfaces on ticketing platforms and so on and so forth. And you know, with the last newsletter, we're reintroducing burner bios this year, which I think is going to skew this figure massively down, because we're adding a whole new interface for participants to jump through in order to gain access to tickets. But it's definitely for the benefit of us as a community to be able to centralize that information and use it to distribute tickets effectively. We sampled a few bits of the feedback from the open-ended answers, you know, just the ones that tickled us or made us feel good about the event when everyone's a bit frazzled afterwards. But from our side, you know, as people who, and you know, there's a huge team that works really hard behind the scenes to pull off the event, and this feedback, you know, we are so lucky to be working with an organization where we get feedback like this and get to feel that we played a very small part in bringing the event together. So yeah, we just really appreciate all the feedback that we get, even the bad stuff. We asked about traveling to the burn, and again, in the total, based on the feedback given, we reckon people traveled about 33 million kilometers in order to get to AfrikaBurn. But then when we look at that as an average per individual burner, per method of transport, we still see that, you know, the average amount of kilometers traveled per individual, depending on the transport they chose, is still significant. And yeah, that's a photo of this year's event site. And, you know, people travel a long way to come and build this temporary city, and it's hugely appreciated. But yeah, an incredible logistics event when you think about it. As with every year in previous years, we ask you about the money that you spend en route. It's interesting for us to know. It's also useful for us when we're talking to the people who we ask for an event permit from, so that they know that we're not just giving them reasons to grade the dirt road because of all the wear and tear, that we're actually contributing to the local economy. And we can kind of see this really steep increase in terms of the money spent by participants to get to AfrikaBurn. That may be symptomatic of kind of broad-based cost of living increases, but it is a significant amount of money.
Just to chime in, we're very careful with this number that we present. We clean the data incredibly carefully. It's all done manually. A lot of people are very descriptive about what they buy, or they add far too much detail. But out of everything in this entire survey, we probably spend the most time cleaning this up and representing it, because it's an incredibly effective statistic as well.
Yeah, and then we kind of map it out around where it was spent. Obviously, the bulk is in Cape Town, but we can see that the distribution of spend is, you know, also throughout the country. Even Bloemfontein gets R1 million from burners, which is nice to see. Some more art. Again, we asked about contributing towards the community. In previous years, when we asked the question, we always said, oh, my gift was my presence, or my presence was the gift. And that was a bit of a red herring. And so it was, again, it's kind of interesting for us in terms of an organization that's built, our backbone is volunteerism and participation. So it's really interesting to see that kind of split, you know, that so many people were part of theme camps versus people holding workshops and stuff, you know. And again, for us, I don't believe it's a vanity metric. I just think it's really interesting for us as an organization to get a kind of good understanding of what participation means on the ground during the course of the event.
Brian, would you be able to and happy to take a question about the previous slide subject? It's from, Tim's actually answered it in the chat. Karen was asking, is the spend increase proportionate to the number of RSA attendees? Tim's response was the number of participants was pretty much the same, so it's a CPI or cost of living increase plus increased spend. Does that help, Karen?
Sorry, it's Karen's husband here.
Howdy.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I seem to recall from previous stats that the number of South Africans attending last year was around about 49% or 50%. So it's great to see the increase this year. And I was wondering if that had anything to do with the increase, or the 46% increase in spend. But yeah, no, thanks very much. You have answered my question.
Yeah, because it's hard to tell.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell.
Thanks, Brian.
No worries.
Thanks,
Again, we ask people if they volunteer. There was a slight decrease in this. You know, 2% is relatively insignificant, but in the big scheme of the cosmos, we've seen that statistic decline really since 2022, bit by bit, incrementally. So if we add it up over the years, we do see that certainly from the event survey side, that there's fewer volunteers. And, you know, I can go through these quotes and stuff. You know, being a volunteer and being part of the community is really what makes AfrikaBurn unique and special compared to any other event. We asked you what your experience of volunteering left you felt. And so it was interesting for us to see that volunteer numbers might be going down, but the experience, when we ask you how it made you feel, I felt fulfilled, I felt happy, I felt rewarded. Those figures went up this year compared to last year. So we could determine that the experience of volunteering is getting better and more fulfilling or more rewarding. Yet the actual numbers of volunteers seem to be going down. And I think that's something we've noted as an organization and will be looking to address going forwards. We actually, this data is from our volunteer portfolio, so it's interesting to kind of correlate survey data against other sources. And all the portfolios that we're part of have to report our volunteer hours and data. And what we observe as a broad trend is that fewer volunteers are doing more hours across various portfolios. And yeah, it's not that there's anything necessarily right or wrong with that. We have to then ask questions like, well, is that because the volunteers are having such a good time that they're just doing all the shifts and there's no shifts for anyone else? No, we don't believe that to necessarily be true. But we kind of need to interrogate that with various portfolios, because I certainly know from within my portfolio, volunteers are a lifeblood of what we do and what makes it special. And certainly something we need to look at going forwards. But I think it's also with the incoming burner bios, we'll then have the tools to try and address this and try and make sure that people coming in understand what volunteering is or isn't. We've had big internal debates about even if the word volunteer is the right word versus participation and so on and so forth, which is great. It's kind of always in a state of flux, but focused on kind of creating the best regional burn event in the world. When we add up all the numbers, which I love to do, we see that in total 524 days of volunteer hours were gifted at AfrikaBurn 2025. I mean, that's like a year and a half's worth of volunteer hours gifted at the burn. So it's, again, great to see, you know, maybe with slightly fewer volunteers doing those hours, there's opportunity to open it up, because it certainly seems like there's more than enough opportunities to have amazing volunteer experiences within the AfrikaBurn experience. This year we ran a water point experiment. We didn't tell anyone about it because it was an experiment and we wanted to see how it went down. The most dangerous thing about AfrikaBurn is to place expectation on what you're going to find in Tanquetown. So placing the expectation that there's going to be gallons of water available would have been a very dangerous thing to do. But it was really nice that those people who did find them or became aware of them thought they were great. And that's definitely something we're going to expand upon. You know, we're well aware that the idea of bringing in a gazillion litres from Ceres or Cape Town and then shipping half of it back isn't necessarily a great way to burn fuel. But also we're aware that water is a precious resource, especially on Kwaggafontein where we host the event, and that it needs to be used responsibly. So again, there's great teams and brains within the Leave No Trace and Cara, and there's some really great people kind of working on developing this idea and concept, and it's kind of come from within the community, and we're kind of looking forward to seeing how that develops into the future. Some nice feedback the biggest lesson. I'll be volunteering next time. So again, this is from someone's second burn, and it's interesting as a community, because for a lot of first timers, when they come in, there's a lot of pressure to know how all the principles work and how you implement them on site. And we do the best we can to make sure that people have as much information as possible and are as informed as possible. But, if we're honest, it does take a few burns to really find your rhythm in terms of what you're going to do it and how you're going to do it. And I think it's really, really exciting to see that happening in the feedback, that, it's someone's second burn and they're going to volunteer next time, and despite their shyness they can, and that's really what we're about, and is really exciting to see that growth and development. Again, we asked last year, so this is last year's data, if you think Tanqua Town should be generator free, and then we asked again this year. And we actually noticed quite a strong shift, particularly in the context that the org for the first time went 99% solar. And it was really nice to see that shift. And so that's definitely something we're looking at now as an organization, in terms of really encouraging everyone where possible to be as generator free as possible. And there's been some great threads on some of the WhatsApp groups in terms of pooling solar resources. The each one teach one in this area is phenomenal and really great to see. And it's just, it's just so encouraging on an individual as well as an org perspective to see this shift within how AfrikaBurn is constructed every year. As with always, we like to see lots of families and pensioners on site. And it was nice again to see that people are starting to notice this shift in participation. We made kids tickets free a couple of years ago, and pensioners, I even introduced my pensioner father this year, which was a huge risk, but great fun as well to be able to share it with my dad, but also that's being recognised, and that AfrikaBurn is really open and multifaceted, and that anyone can join. We asked you about the WTF booklets. We printed a load more this year, which really helped the figure of I didn't get one. So that was really nice to see. It's a labour of love from the comms team. We do struggle with the desire for everyone to have all the information at all times, in an environment where things are in a kind of constant state of flux, and we really try our hardest to make sure that people can plan and figure things out as best as they possibly can. But it doesn't always, we unfortunately still can't print the kind of weekly schedule of events, but it's certainly something we're working towards and looking to work towards. We asked everyone about all their experiences across all the kind of various creative projects and activities around AfrikaBurn, what people thought of their experience interacting with them. Again, it's really solid feedback in terms of, if you take the blue and the pink bars, which are pretty good and amazing. So you've got two positive feedback channels, you've got two negative, and then the average in the middle. And we can kind of see across the board that it's where people do experience those things. They do say they think that the burns are amazing or pretty good, and the notion that it's really crap is really an outlier within the broad feedback from the participants. And then on the other portfolios, it's hard. I don't necessarily want to kind of go through this in too much detail. I will publish this, and you can actually then go look at it in more detail, because there's kind of every portfolio there. And, you know, it's kind of, it's also kind of dangerous to rank portfolios against each other. You know, how can you compare, you know, box office against the volunteer booth, whatever? You know, they're totally different activities with different outputs or different engagements with participants. But again, really encouraging for us, really encouraging for our teams to see that the pink and blues are really, really up there. Go, Tim.
It's just an interesting statistic, because for the first time in many, many, many years, Throne Crew isn't #1. And I know we're not rating or ranking anything, but the people that clean the toilets coming out as the #1 most enjoyable, or that aspect of things tended to be the lead. And this year it's in the like top 5 or something, but it's yeah. It's important that you all go volunteer to clean toilets, because it's fucking fun.
That's the truth. Yeah, again, while, yeah, there definitely was the perception that there weren't as many performances as previous years, there definitely were performances happening on the ground, and the ones that we did get to interact with were fantastic. We asked you about service providers. Again, we don't necessarily want people to interact with these specific service providers, so it's encouraging for us that, you know, 72% didn't answer about interacting with the medics, and the few that did said how amazing it was. So yeah, but when people do have to interact with the specific service providers on the site, it's really nice, positive feedback as well. Noise levels. Again, we're seeing kind of shifts and trends over time. It was a bit too much, was the one that raised, and that was up from 19% last year. 4%, is it statistically significant? Maybe, maybe not, but it's definitely a broad trend that we've noticed as it's creeping up and up. And there's definitely been chats internally about sound and how it can be the most amazing gift, but it's one of the few gifts you can't refuse if you don't want it. So we're definitely looking at those areas, but obviously, you know, reflecting what the community of participants are asking for. Did you lose any of your property this year? Relatively similar stats as before. There was, you know, almost zero bike thievery, probably because we feel that we're seeing slightly less bikes on site because it's a bit sandier than Stonehenge. But there were still 1 or 2 items reported missing. It's really important that, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, it's AfrikaBurn, and maybe it'll turn up, but it's easier for us on site if things are reported. Go, Tim.
That was literally what I was going to say, sorry.
Here's some feedback. I assume they had a great time. Tim ran it through Google Translate. He can read it out.
I did, but I can't remember what it said now. It was something about it's a truly amazing life experience or something like that. And thank you.
It says magical. Even I can translate that into magic.
Actually-
so magic is always fucking good.
I'm gonna guess. Simply magical. Thank you. Regal adventure with my life.
Okay, I'm gonna step in. Regalo means a gift. It was a gift.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Kat. I mentioned it earlier when we asked people about the race and asking about people noticing the impact of our mechanisms to foster diversity and inclusion. Again, it's really nice to see this being acknowledged and recognised, and increases there in terms of people reporting that they're benefiting from them. So it's good to see, it's encouraging, and it's certainly how we align ourselves going forwards into future burns. Again, another nice slide. Are you aware that there are 11 principles? Great. The bulk of us are aware of the 11 principles that are these kind of loose guidelines rather than rules to help make your burn better. Again, yeah, this one tickled me. So many people have a preconceived idea of what AfrikaBurn is, but once you know, you know. To spend days in the middle of nowhere, taking it all in, special, and I cannot wait for next year. Great, neither can I. Which of the principles do you try and practice when you're not at the burn? The highest is leave no trace, which is seemingly obvious, as well as decommodification, which is the lowest. We live in the default world, which is overwhelmingly driven by commodification and capitalism. So it would obviously be a lot harder to do that. But it's, yeah, again, the question isn't really for anything other than to make people think about the application of principles when you're not at AfrikaBurn, rather than using it to change anything about the event. But for us, it's really important that what you practice and what you feel benefits you and makes your life better in AfrikaBurn is something that you can follow through into the default world. Has the time at AfrikaBurn impacted your ability? Again, yes, massively. Yes, a little bit. So that's really nice to see, I think from any perspective, that what you do has impact beyond the week in the desert is really good for us. And, you know, it's why things like the moot map and leave no trace and going on and on about glitter is worthwhile, because it does have positive impact in the long run. Thank you. Burn number 5 and 20 more, and they're bringing new people with them for their first experience, which is great. I think that's certainly one of my great vicarious pleasures, is when you introduce someone new to the burn is a great pleasure. Are you aware that a portion of your ticket cost goes towards social initiatives? Again, yeah. This was very similar to last year. We try and keep people updated about all the various kind of outreach and other projects that we do outside of the event. You know, ever since AfrikaBurn started, it's always been about more than just a week in the desert. And you know, as we're a registered non-profit, we definitely like to expand our horizon way beyond just a week in Tanquatown, and it's nice to see that happening. Has your participation inspired you to create more or participate more? And again, this for us was really exciting and revealing, you know, that people left AfrikaBurn saying they were inspired to do more, that they would love to build a mutant vehicle or attempt an artwork or a performance. That for us is really exciting, because that's how we grow as a community and as a movement, is if we're the spark for people to try and do something creative in the future. Go, Tim.
I'm very happy with my life the way it is. It initially struck me as quite negative, but actually I would suspect that those are the people that run large-scale theme camps and build art already and really couldn't bear the idea of doing any more. That's my
Exactly.
suspicion.
That's good. Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I think that's good. How do the following statements reflect your point of view? Okay, so again, these are kind of standard questions. We've had them in the survey years and years. The one we just highlight the odd ones, but ticket sales should be limited and participants vetted. Okay, so there's really strong agreement there on that side, and that's certainly something we're looking at with the upcoming burner bios and how we look at ticketing in the future. The amount of time and effort put into participating is huge. It's a huge amount of time and effort that people put in. You know, we're quite focused on volunteerism as a kind of foundation of our movement, but you know, 40%, let's say 49%, that's almost 50, said it's fine that there are people who attend that don't volunteer. So there's always these different stats and information and ways to interpret it. For a lot of people, AfrikaBurn is a year-round activity. Again, really kind of strong results, positively profiling South Africa. Lots of people experienced empowering moments and were impacted positively by the behavior of individuals at AfrikaBurn. And that's really good to see from our perspective. And I love the contrast of the fact the event can be challenging, but can also be a lot of fun. You would normally expect those figures to cancel each other out, but they're both positive. And at the bottom, yeah, inspiring midlife crises on an ongoing basis. Yes, Patsy?
The question about the volunteering and people being okay with, you know, like a large number of people are okay with not volunteering. Does that just pertain to volunteering, or does that pertain to other types of participation too? Because there's a lot of ways that you can participate.
Yeah.
Besides volunteering. So is that purely volunteering, or is that
exactly? Well, maybe that's
form?
a question for better definition in future surveys, because you might interpret it different. My volunteering might not be the same as yours.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. And again, we asked whether your life had been changed or transformed by your experience at AfrikaBurn. And everyone said it was changed, but we've got to ask whether it was a positive or negative change. So we're just going to assume that everyone had a positive change. And again, yeah, if 90% of people are saying the community and organization is united in something worthwhile, then I certainly believe that we are all united in something very worthwhile. On to the more negative statements where people were like negatively impacted by others or experienced harassment. You know, again, if in the bigger picture, yeah, you know, people didn't experience harassment, but even at smaller numbers, it's something that is a concern for us. But, you know, we have STAR program, World program support, huge efforts being made in all sorts of areas to keep this to an absolute minimum. We asked you how you think AfrikaBurn is doing, particularly as we kind of rebuild out of COVID as an organization, as a kind of awkward teenage phase we're going through. But again, just so reassuring and so important, certainly from our perspective, that we can see where we're doing well, And we can see that the big broad trend is that we're doing well. But yeah, we're always still striving for 100% in these areas. And yeah, like this, we look at this and say, yeah, you know, there was a big, strong focus towards art within AfrikaBurn last year, and that's going to continue. And we're going to, you know, keep turning up the dials on that. But yeah, if these were my matric results in January, I'd be pretty chuffed. Again, and within the feedback that comes back, it's so nice to hear people who first time back in 6 years. Having led a Burning Man camp for 11 years, seeing the difference in engagement between AfrikaBurn and Burning Man was so refreshing. Didn't ask myself once, why am I doing this shit? Again, just, yeah. I obviously cherry picked the feedback that made me feel really good. But it's my report, so I'll do that. We asked you about numbers, if there are enough people. It seems we're kind of settling into this 10 to 11,000 number. You know, some people are calling for a few more participants. Very few are asking for double, a lot for fewer. So we're kind of settling into this space that we're in, and it's kind of something we look at every year. And again, the burner bios and having a much better understanding of our kind of global community is going to really help us with this in terms of accurately reflecting what an annual event should be based on community participation rather than perception of ticket sales. We asked everyone what 3 words they would use to describe themselves. Again, we're a really nice, kind, creative, caring bunch. And we also asked people to describe themselves as burners. And again, the dominant word there was free, followed behind by love. And yeah, that just is so wonderful and just a great joy for everyone internally to see. Open feedback. So at the end of the survey, and everyone's filled in all the stuff, and then we then ask you for your kind of written feedback. And so we've got this kind of broad data set, which is very numbers driven, where we can say, oh, great, 88% of people think we're amazing, so we must be great. But then there's the section at the end with open feedback, and someone's comment here was just kind of was the truth of it. You know, you can go out and have a fantastic meal, but one thing might not be perfect, and then that's the feedback. But it doesn't mean that the meal was terrible. It's just the feedback, and so for us, it's really important to read it, and so all the open feedback is shared with the internal team to review and go through, and then we look at the kind of broader themes within it. And so this year there was very much a certain amount of feedback. Oh, I'd like to see more large artwork in Tanquetown. And so from our side, you know, there were still lots and lots of art registrations. There last year, when the Tree of Stories burnt, it was actually a bonus artwork because it was actually built for 2020, which was cancelled. So the Tree of Stories was meant to be 2020, and so it was actually burnt last year. So, you know, within this, our grant funding pot that people apply for to bring art to AfrikaBurn is the biggest it's ever been. It's going up again next year. We definitely observed in the feedback that, you know, was just as much we'd have people saying, oh, there wasn't enough big artwork this year. There were other people saying, oh my God, there was so much artwork and it was amazing. We always have that duality. And it's also about the expectation of what is an AfrikaBurn artwork. And we really saw that there was some some amazingly kind of smaller, more detailed artworks out towards the outskirts of the Binokring that really resonated strongly with our community and were kind of flagged as such within feedback. And I suppose, yeah, as a participant created event, you know, it's for our artist community and the artists within our community to reflect back to us what they want to bring to the burn and how they want to do it. And so while if there's not 10 big structures across the horizon, it doesn't necessarily mean that there was less artwork at AfrikaBurn this year. Where was the temple? Was another open feedback theme, or the temple was the best temple ever. The temple was really different this year. We had there were two crews planned to bring a temple structure to the event, and unfortunately couldn't follow through. And over the course of the last cycle, one of our previous DPW leads, but also a massive part of our community and the AfrikaBurn story, Helena, unfortunately passed away. And so as the temple was, we could see that there was the possibility that there might not be a temple as we would expect it within AfrikaBurn. Everyone, or the bulk of DPW, stepped up and actually volunteered outside of the work that they do as DPW, and built an amazing set of structures during the course of the event. So if you went there on Monday, it might not have been there. But if you were there later in the week, it certainly was. And yeah, it was just an incredible thing to witness. And from the org's perspective, it was a really interesting conversation that was had within the community in terms of acknowledging what a temple represents for us and why it's so important and why we really need one, and how this year's was different and offered a different space to reflect. But also galvanized our community as well, in that, you know, we've had a record amount of temple applications this year. And yeah, it is a reflection on the applications and the temple structures that our community want to build, rather than the org going out and pre-ordering a temple based on what we believe is appropriate. Toilets are ongoing. What happened to all the hand sanitizer is always one. We don't know. We ordered like double the amount of hand sanitizer. Either someone was drinking it or taking it back to their tent and bathing in it. We don't know. People always talk about the smell of the toilets and the eye contact that you have to make when you're using them. Fair few comments about those of us who identify as males not being able to sit down. And again, as you're going through the feedback, you'll bounce from one person saying, my God, I'm not coming back because of the toilets, to another person saying the toilets were the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Go, Tim.
Just an anecdotal little story. We were trying to gift hand sanitizer this year, and it was incredibly hard to get people to accept hand sanitizer as a gift, believe it or not.
There you go. There were a few comments about the lighting and wayfaring challenges. The numbers on the streets need improvement. The big numbered lights and maps on street poles, yes. It was really nice. There was an initiative to place artworks just by the dunes, so more within the street network, and a few people reported that was quite helpful in terms of finding their bearings. Like the suburbs can get a bit mono, and so it was really nice that the kind of artworks and structures within the suburbs actually help people get their bearings, and that's definitely been noted within the city planners. Also, other people commented, oh, it was quite nice not having being able to find their way that easily, and they actually quite enjoyed getting lost and ended up making new friends and discoveries. But yeah, definitely been noted and something we're working on for next year. Another big thing was, please make sure it doesn't become like Burning Man. So we had a lot of, we get the usual kind of commentary about weekend warriors. But actually, when we look at the data at the beginning of this presentation, everyone's on site by Wednesday. So there aren't any weekend warrior, or there's very few. And it actually, maybe it's just us. Maybe we're the weekend warriors and we gradually behave badly as the week goes on. There's definitely some anecdotal commentary about African versus foreign participants, and again, different opinions as to whether foreign participants need to be limited. It's commentary on lack of kind of what is perceived to be authentic African participation. Yeah, ongoing feedback that's noted, and again, when we look at burner bios and ticketing in future cycles, we'll then be able to make sure that we have as much African participation as possible. Again, lots of feedback on noise. A lot of people saying it's too much, and everyone's always saying that there's not enough variety. And so we have to ask the question, or not, whether we are a music festival. And yeah, it's one of those things with there's the numbers data earlier in the survey, but when it comes to the open feedback, there was definitely quite a lot of feedback about noise throughout the week. So that's it in the open source. This is just a thanks to everyone who did all the work, mostly the participants and everyone who filled in the survey. Yeah, we'll see you all next year. But just before then, there's Streetopia at the end of November, and we hope to see a lot of you there and then. And that was, I hope everyone's still awake, and we can try and answer some questions or have some feedback. I can stop sharing or bounce back to specific slides. I don't know if there's any questions. If there's not, that's cool too.
Nola.
Sorry, I'm
great.
using Zoom on my phone for the first time in my life, and it's a bit fucking confusing, but here we are. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. I overheard, I did only get into the meeting a little late. Sorry about that, due to not having Zoom on my phone. I heard you mention about burner bios.
Yeah.
Now, I've had a burner bio since footsack ago. Does
Yep.
that still, do we have to do new ones, or does it carry over?
They're going to all be brand new.
So we have to start it over again.
Yep. It's a whole new system. The last system went out of date, I suppose, during the COVID years. Tim can explain better.
Okay, thank you.
Two aspects to that. So we did, because we carry people's personal data and it's so important to keep it safe, ultimately we reached a point with the previous tribe system where we weren't able to keep it updated and secure enough. So I copied it onto a flash drive and threw it into the temple before it burned, and so we have to start again. That said, the second part is that slowly as we can, we will be bringing in and importing old projects and old statistics and things that we still have that aren't like personal data, that are like your AfrikaBurn history rather than your medical history.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
Well, we have to have a burner name.
You can make up a new one.
Yeah.
Any more questions, anyone?
Hi, sorry guys, it's Corin's husband again. I don't know how to put my hand up for a question. So maybe a comment and then a question. One of your earlier slides, I think it must have been about 10 to 8. Yeah, basically the point I want to make is don't ignore the neutrals. They're sitting on a fence and they're not too sure which way to go. So just a thought. And then maybe moving to my question now, that is around, I don't know if it's just me, but there seems to be camps offering package deals to participants where you arrive and, you know, ABC is laid on for you. Have we looked into that? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, plug and play. I know Lexi's here from the theme camps and the supplier policy. I mean, we introduced a supplier policy over the past couple of years that's been under refinement to try and mitigate plug and play camps. Yeah, it's something we don't know that we'll ever be able to absolutely exclude. We've definitely got a lot of programs in place to handle it. Cara, do you want to jump in? Is that Cara?
I'm trying to unmute myself. I'm figuring out Zoom on my phone, just like Nola. Yeah, I think that's like the whole story behind the supplier policy, and where it sort of came from was I returned to the burn after like a long hiatus, and I was like, yo, there's a lot of people that aren't doing things anymore. And I think the thing is that there's always going to be people that are trying to offer package deals, and I think it's up to us as a community, not necessarily as like policemen from the organizational side, to be like, yo, man, that's not very burner of you. So yeah, like I think it's sitting in that like liminal principle space, right? Where you like the principles are like the cultural I don't know what indicators around which we center ourselves. And so as somebody that is a burner, like, you know, that's not cool, man. Maybe if you call people out there, stop doing it.
Yeah. Look, I acknowledge that it's difficult to police. I mean, I'm not too sure if we want to stop
I
policing it.
don't know your name.
Okay.
Apologies.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Karen's husband. Patsy?
Okay. I actually know where the unmute button is because I'm on my laptop. I wanted to just also add that everybody is very diligent about making sure that those plug and play and the package deal kind of vibe gets nipped in the bud, but it's sometimes very difficult to spot. So as fellow burners and as participants, when you become aware, report it, because what happens very often, we come back to the city and we're back in the city for like a month and somebody goes, oh yeah, but I was camped right next to a plug and play camp. Dude, if you don't say anything, we don't know anything. So I'm not saying Karen's husband that you are one of those, but I would encourage everybody who's in this town hall to then spread the word. Is if you see something, report something, because then we can investigate right there in the moment. We can see if it's true. After the fact, we've got no proof, no evidence, and we can't do anything about something that we have no evidence for. That's all. Thank you.
I think Josh is looking for the hand button to ask a question.
Oh, sorry, no, I didn't. For some reason, I can't find it on the app. But I just wanted to say a special thank you to Sid for her management of the suppliers, because it was invariably a catastrophe. and was one of the only people on the ball. So I wanted to extend my thanks to her again. And then just yeah, you know exactly who I am.
Yes, I know who you are, Jolly Jumper.
Exactly. Yeah, that was just another one of those roll with the problems kind of things. That was all I really wanted to say.
We are going to be leaving.
Whoever was speaking just then, I think we lost you halfway through what you were saying.
Unmute yourself.
Cool. If you were trying to say something a moment ago and there's been zero response, it's because you sounded like you were reactivating mute partway through, so we haven't heard what you were saying. Any other questions for Brian and Tim? Cool, folks. Well, then, unless there's anything in closing that either Brian or Tim would like to say. Yes, thanks, Bash, for the reminder about Streetopia on the 29th of November. He's popped a link in the chat. And a question from Nola, or a comment.
Yeah, thanks. I didn't want to raise hands while the presentation was going through. I just want to go back to the what the fuck guide. And I think it was a success also because I think it really helps that people must go claim it at volunteer booth. And there was a lot there. And when people were asking me, where did you get your booklet? I said, go to volunteer booth, go to volunteer booth, go to volunteer booth.
Yeah,
I think that's where all maps and WTF guides should live, actually.
it's quite a good idea.
Yeah, except maybe a map for the driver only so that they can find their fucking way into the city. But yeah, volunteer booth.
Good idea.
Thanks, Nola. If there are any... Oh, Tim?
We're not supposed to use this opportunity to remind people that they can join various different parts of the organization and assist? Yes? No? Well, you can join various parts of the organization and assist with various things. You can volunteer anywhere at AfrikaBurn. You can pretty much do whatever the hell you want, and we'd be very happy to have you. Go check out our website.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Tim. There's a couple of comments still in the chat, which I hope the recording keeps for us. Reminder from Bash to look out for volunteer days. They're a lot of fun, and I think they're going to become even more fun. They're really cool opportunities to interact with people and get that gees going and do some fun stuff. And Josh asking for a numbering of the camps. He had a hard time with initials on the map. And Streetopia is Nola's birthday, so that is all the more reason to get your asses down there and wish Nola happy Streetopia. I mean, happy birthday. Okie dokes, folks.
But Nola's birthday.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks everybody. Thanks to the behind the scenes team. The amazing Bash is the technical maestro for putting together so much of this. Of course, thank you to the guys who put together the content. Thank you, Faisal. Thank you, Maloba. And thank you all for joining in and participating. It's been great. Thank you. Good night, folks.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers, guys.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Brian.
Goodbye.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Brad. You guys are awesome. Love the
Thanks,
presentation.
Bash.
Get out of here.
Bye.
Cheers.
Good night, everyone. See you
Good
at
Good
the
night, John
burn.
Boy.
What,
Good
the next
night,
volunteer
Miriam.
day?
Good night.
Get at
How
the
do I
volunteer
get
day.
out of here?
I
Help me,
don't.
someone. It's this.
There's a
I can't
button
get
that
out.
says leave. Click on
Oh,
leave.
there. Thanks.